hold on. What? What did my notes say? Huh? Oh, got it. Right. This is the joy of coming to the show live. You get to hear the extra bits. Salt Lake City, what is good? How are you doing? Oh man, it is a delight to be here. Thank you all so much for coming out. I am very excited to perform here in Salt Lake City. It was long prophesized when I was supposed to perform here last year. And then the Delta variant said, no, sir. But then I said, no, we'll do it next year. And here we are. Thank you all so much for coming out to the show. Give yourselves a round of applause for making it out. I've had a lovely time in Salt Lake so far. I was walking to the venue today from my hotel at undisclosed location. And I walked past a first street that I saw was called John Stockton Boulevard. And I was like, oh, cool, that's fun. Oh, I bet this street was more fun a couple years ago before he was like super weird anti-vax guy. And then I kept walking, and then I saw Carl Malone Boulevard, and it had a speed limit and an age limit on it, which was really weird. It's like, oh, I can't walk on the street if I'm above 13? Oh. Anyway, now that all the basketball jokes out of the way. No, it's a delight to be here. I was very excited because when we got to our hotel at undisclosed location, we did see that nearby there was a Greek festival going on this weekend. Anybody go to the Greek festival? No one? Oh, that guy, yeah, all right, sweet. Well, we walked by the Greek festival and I was like, oh, we're doing the newest Olympian live. Like, this is very perfect timing. So today, Kelly and I went to the Greek festival for lunch, and it was delicious. And it was absolutely mobbed with people. There were so many people there. So glad that we were able to experience Salt Lake culture and have some Greek food in prep for at least this first half of the podcast live show that'll be Greek themed. I will be going over the final chapter of Percy Jackson and the Titan's Curse for this first act, which is gonna be very fun. Not doing it alone. I'm always joined by a guest, and this guest is someone very special, someone near and dear to my heart. It is Kelly Beckman Schubert, my wife. Welcome, Kelly, to the stage. Hello. Thank you for bringing all of my things.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going? Now, we've already had you discuss all sorts of different Percy Jackson-based things in terms of your godly parent and all that.
Yes.
Before we get into it, though, just what were your thoughts on this final chapter?
It was a good conclusion, left a lot of cliffhangers for what's going to come in the next book. I thought it was a good wrap-up, but left the door open for more.
Yeah, I agree. So let's get into it. So chapter 20 is called, as I scroll up, I Get a New Enemy for Christmas. At the time, my guess, as I always try to have them, I just guess like, all right, they're trying to set up something in book 4, or is the reveal, because as I've been predicting, it's hard because I'm very far ahead of where the podcast is right now, because I had to bulk record a bunch of stuff before we're traveling for like the next 4 months. So I have said this in the past, but I don't know if you all here live have heard me say this, but my prediction is that Bianca is a kid of Hades. So at this point in time, when I was trying to guess stuff, I was thinking, okay, maybe there's a reveal that she is a child of Hades, and now Hades is the new enemy for Christmas. Maybe he's mad at Percy for letting her get into harm's way. Now is my guess for the chapter title. I was super wrong. And I'm also, even now that I finished reading chapter 20, I don't really get what the chapter title is referring to.
I think I understand.
Okay,
yeah.
I'm just reading it now. I'm like, second guessing myself. That was the chapter title. So where we last left our heroes was in chapter 19, where Percy had a big old party on Olympus, and he had awkward tension with Annabeth, who he loves with all of his heart, but he can't tell her. Before they leave Olympus, Percy calls Tyson via Iris Messenger, and he tells Tyson all about their wild adventures, and he tells him about Bessie, and how Annabeth is safe, which makes Tyson very happy.
Very sweet.
So sweet. Percy is finally able to muster up enough courage to tell Tyson that the shield that Tyson made him got absolutely wrecked by the Manticore. But that excites Tyson because that means that the shield worked and it saved his life. And if we could just all have as positive of an outlook on life as Tyson does, the world would be a better place.
I love that. He definitely made it. I mean, it was beautiful and like ornamental, right? But he definitely made it to protect Percy. And so it did its job.
Yes, it really did. And I like that Tyson, it's the right kind of gift of like, yeah, the shield is so that you don't get destroyed.
Right.
It should get destroyed. Yeah. That's what it was made for.
It's like helmets, right? If your helmet is all busted up after an accident, that means it did its job. Get a new helmet.
Yeah, but you have so many cool stickers on your helmets
I know.
that you would be really sad if your helmet broke.
When we were packing all of our stuff to put in storage, I like bubble wrapped my helmet because if it drops and like breaks, I have to get a new helmet. It's not worth having anymore. It's got so many cool stickers on it.
You have carefully curated your BTS stickers all on the helmet.
All over it. And I'd probably like peel them off and like destroy my nails if my helmet broke.
So Tyson promises that he will fix it next summer, and just the thought of having Tyson around makes Percy very happy and it lifts his spirits. Love this a lot.
Also, he's made like 2,500 swords already.
Yes, which we are about to learn, so making another shield really shouldn't be that big of a deal. Percy is shocked that the Cyclops will allow Tyson to take off of work, but Tyson says, it's okay, I've made 2,741 magic swords.
Which also, the fact that they're giving him the summer off means they're missing out on like 1,000 swords worth of productivity.
Okay, but also, like, what is the average production of a worker? Because Tyson is criminally underpaid. Like, if you're putting up that much production, like, Tyson's got to start a union with himself. Like, he is such an asset to them. So his boss says that that's a job well done enough to where Tyson can take the whole summer off. And I think that that's very exciting because now the book 4 team is being assembled. Clearly, Rick has written away in where it's like, well, Tyson won't be busy for the next book. I know he was busy in this one, but I think he'll be okay. Now, Tyson has to go back to work. So Percy makes his final call, which is to his mom, Sally Jackson. Very sweet. And when the call connects, she is laughing and holding hands with Mr. Blowfish himself. She makes up a lie that she left her writing journal in the other room so that Paul can go over there. And I gotta say, Sally Jackson, living in Manhattan, having an other room? Okay. Big flex, Sally. Jeez.
Good point. That's a great point.
More than one room? Oh, my God. Made of money. How much did she sell the Ugly Gabe statue for?
Yes.
Clearly a poop ton. Forgot for a second this was the clean one. Act 2 will get raunchy. So she asks Paul to go get the notebook in the other room. And she frantically asks Percy if he's okay. He says that he is. And he asks her very sassily, how's the writing seminar going? She says it's fine, but it's not important. What is important is how things went with Percy. And thus, she asks all about that. He fills her in as quickly as he can, and I love that Mr. Blowfish is the slowest dude with everything. He took the longest poop of his life previously. Now he can't find a notebook.
Yeah, how many notebooks does she have that he's rifling through back there?
She does have at least 2, as we will learn, but still, come on, Paul.
Which one?
Hopefully he's a really nice guy, because if he needs to do anything, you've got to really budget for time. So Percy fills her in. She lets out a big sigh of relief when he says that Annabeth is okay, which I love how much she loves Annabeth. So great. And Sally says that she is proud of Percy. He says that she should get back to her homework. What a burn. She stammers trying to explain her relationship with Paul, but Percy stops her to simply ask, are you happy? And she says, yes. She says, being around him makes me happy. And Percy says, then it's cool. Seriously, don't worry about me. And then as the narrator, he admits that he was telling the truth and he actually meant this, which is very cool. So I'm glad that Percy is a good son. And I like that Rick Riordan writing this, he did it in a way where he's still teaching the lesson of sometimes you have to accept that your parent might start dating someone else and it's going to be tough. But he does it in a way where Percy's doing the good version of it, this is how you should act, as opposed to what I feel like is in every other children's media where it's the kid is grumpy for the whole movie and only in the end do they realize that the sweater vest wearing stepdad candidate's a nice guy. I like that Rick is just right off the bat being oh, no, you can teach the good version. For me, this is reverse Bluey. which
Oh, yeah.
my hot take is that I don't think that show should be shown to children. Because I don't know if anyone's watched Bluey. It's a wonderful Australian
love
cartoon
it.
about a family of dogs.
I watch it to fall asleep sometimes.
But the titular character, Bluey,
Yeah.
is a menace.
Yeah.
Like a terrible, awful kid. Like so mean, very rude to
A bully
her
to
sister,
her sister,
Bingo.
yeah.
Bluey is a garbage child.
Yeah.
Awful, like truly, truly awful.
Yeah.
But Bluey's parents are lovely. Bluey's dad is a saint.
Yeah.
And if you ever talk to people about it, adults are like, I love Bluey. Yes, because this show should only be watched by adults. It's a show about parenting, not about kids. Because every episode is like, Bluey's a dick for 7 minutes.
Yeah.
And then in minute 8, they're like, Bluey, stop being a dick. And they're like, oh, okay, you're right, mom and dad. I shouldn't do that. But if you're 6 and you're watching the show, like, do you have the,
Right.
media literacy to be like, oh, when Bluey was yelling things for the past 80% of the episode, that was Bluey being wrong. I
Right.
should not do that. No, you're just going to mimic whatever Bluey was doing. That show is about parenting. It's not for
Yeah.
kids. This is the soapbox I will die on.
Also, Bingo, the younger sister, is just amazing.
The show should be called
Bingo.
Bingo or whatever the dad, like, it shouldn't be named after the worst character. Anyway, Percy Jackson. Percy thinks to himself that he should be more worried about it given the tragic relationships. So he should be more concerned about his mother's relationship and if that is going to be another tragic one. But seeing his mother so happy results in him just kind of pushing all these thoughts aside. And it does make me a little worried. Like, I think Paul is probably fine. But if he turns out to be a villain, I will be so mad. I will be so upset at Paul Blowfish. I will just... I will be enraged if this is like a multi-book long con where he is like a sneaky double agent kind of thing.
What if he turns out to be a blowfish?
Then that's fine. Like, that's okay. He's got a secret. Sally's got a secret. That's okay.
Is this the first time that narrator Percy has called him Ugliano when referring to Gabe?
That's Gabe's last name.
Isn't it Ugliano, though? Doesn't he call him Ugliano here?
Okay, you're clearly audiobooking. I mean, it's spelled the same way.
Oops, my bad.
See, Uncle Rick wrote this book for children.
I thought...
And he's calling Smelly Gabe ugly by giving him a last name
No, but...
that looks like ugly.
Okay, I had to listen to the audiobook today to
Sure.
listen to the chapter. And normally the narrator... Super annoying. Hate the audiobooks. Normally the narrator pronounces it Ugliano. I swear he said Ugliano this time, which I thought was...
Okay.
Yes, okay, yes.
Okay, but it's not spelled differently in the book.
I don't know. Maybe. I was like, sick burn, Percy. Nice.
I would love if there was like Rick was in a director's chair, like, no, this time pronounce it Ugliano.
Ugliano.
Because it's a burn. So Sally asks if Percy promises not to call him Mr. Blowfish. And Percy says, well, maybe not to his face anyway, which is the correct approach in life.
That was also the first time that I remembered it's not blowfish.
Yeah, it's Blowfist. Yeah.
Yeah.
Paul is almost done. The timer, I need to know how long this took. I'm excited for when the TV show does this because I'll just have a stopwatch. Like, how long did it take Mr. Blowfist to poop? But in this case, find a book, which is arguably an easier task.
I do that when characters in movies have to hold their breaths. I'm like, oh, let me try it too. And like hold the breath as long as them. And after like 2 minutes, I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, no.
We're all dead right now.
Never works. Paul's almost done. Sally's got to go. She asks Percy if she's going to see him for Christmas, and he asks if she will put blue candy in his stocking. She says as long as he isn't too old for that, and he says he'll never be too old for that, and this is adorable. Just absolutely adorable. Shout out to Kelly acquiring blue snacks for when Stephen and I did our Hades stream on Patreon.
Yeah.
It was delightful. So the call ends, and then Percy thinks that Thalia was right way back in chapter 1 when she said that his mom was pretty cool. And this is even more adorable. It's admirable, if you will, and I will, because it's my podcast. So Argus picks up Annabeth, Grover, and Percy at the Empire State Building. And then it was a weird turn of phrase in the book because the narrator said that Argus ferried them back to camp through a light snowstorm. And I was like, oh, they took a ferry all the way? But then the next sentence they say that the Long Island Expressway was empty. And I was like, oh, they're using the word ferry just to mean like traveled back. I don't think I've ever heard that. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe it's a Texan thing because Uncle Rick, Texas,
We don't really have ferries in Texas. So I don't
That's
know.
true, but maybe that's why it would be used as
Maybe-
more of a
okay, maybe
normal
we do.
thing.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, it would just be, to me, it's just like confusing. And Texans love to do this because when I was a waiter at Papado Seafood Kitchen, people would be like, oh, I'd like a Coke. And then I would write that down. And they'd be like, oh, I wanted a Dr. Pepper. I'd be like, why did you say you wanted a Coke? They would say, oh, I meant soda. I'd be like, you shouldn't have said a different type of soda. And Texans also do that because you guys call all athletic shoes tennis shoes.
Yeah.
Which is so weird.
Yes, I know.
Because there is a type of shoe called tennis shoes. And it was very confusing for me, someone who played tennis moving to Texas. And the people would be like, oh, did you bring your tennis shoes? Be like, I have basketball practice. Yeah. I brought my basketball shoes. And be like, oh, yeah, that's what I meant. Be like, what? Then what? I don't.
Yeah, I know.
So, I don't know, saying ferry to mean driving a car? Like, what are you? It's so needlessly confusing.
This was only recently pointed out to me by your parents when we all went to play tennis and they were like, you have your tennis shoes? I'm like, yeah. They're like, those aren't tennis shoes. Those are sneakers. I'm like, yes, both? They're like, no, we're getting you tennis shoes. And I was
so
like, oh,
strange.
okay.
It's so strange. It's like the opposite of the thing where it's like, you know, Eskimos have 100 words for snow. It's like, oh, we've turned every shoe into one specific subset of shoes. Mm-hmm. They go to Camp Half-Blood. Chiron greets them back at the big house with hot chocolate and toasted cheese sandwiches. Huh. Now, the particular phrasing of toasted cheese sandwiches called me to Google, all right, is this a grilled cheese or something else? And here's what Google tells me, quote, grilled cheese equals bread buttered on the outside with cheese on the inside cooked on a griddle or in a pan. Toasted cheese sandwiches equal bread, cheese on top, cooked open face in a toaster oven or under a broiler. Oh. And then I Googled, all right, but what about cheese toasties? A British thing that people talk about. Cheese toasties are buttered on the inside of the bread versus the outside, which is just the wrong way to make a sandwich. Get your crap together, Britain. Come on. Oh, you don't butter the inside? What are you doing? Like, I just like this. Like, the British one is incorrectly made. Devastating. If you're making a grilled cheese, you have to butter the outside. That's how you get it crispy. Why would you butter the inside where the cheese... I was so angry. It's so upsetting to me.
I want to make all three and have a taste testing.
Well, I know one's going to come in third. So Chiron makes toasted cheese sandwiches because he loves the broiler or his toaster oven. Grover heads over to the other satyrs to talk about his pan experience. Mm-hmm. And narrator Percy says, quote, within an hour, the satyrs were all running around, agitated, asking where the nearest espresso bar was.
I love it.
The running bit of caffeine addiction for all of these satyrs is very, very funny.
I love it so much.
It's very good. Annabeth and Percy then sit down with Chiron, Beckendorf, Selena, the Stolls, and Clarice. And I wrote, okay, what about her mission? And then they kind of mention that she looks rough, like her mission was tough. And then we don't learn anything about the mission. I guess I'll have to wait for book 4, which I could read tonight if I wanted. Clarice says, I've got news. Bad news. But then Chiron says, we'll fill them in later, because Chiron is always here for the plot. And he knows it's the last chapter of book 3. We don't have time for this. So says we'll fill them in later. But the important part is that they prevailed in their quest and they saved Annabeth. And he's very excited about that. Annabeth then shoots Percy a graceful smile, which causes him to look away because he loves her. Percy thinks back to all of the people who helped him along the way, even people like Rachel Elizabeth Dare, the strange mortal person. I was about to say muggle. That's what happens when it's a half TNO, half Potter Hills live show. But I also remembered, right, that was kind of weird. She was cool, but very brief. She has to come back.
I like that she has 3 parts to her name.
Yeah,
Rachel Elizabeth Dare.
If you're going to give her the full middle name, she's either a child actor in the 90s or an important character that's coming back. So she's got to be coming back.
Or her initials spell out red, which is the color of her hair.
Oh, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I feel like the other time where you have to go like strong middle name is if your name is common. Like if you have a very common, something Jones, like you got to go with the middle name for SEO purposes. Kind of like when Michael B. Jordan had to be like, I'm not the basketball one. The B doesn't stand for basketball. Percy then says out loud, which felt very unrelated to this thought, but he says out loud that Luke is still alive, and Annabeth asks how he knows about this, and the narrator Percy says, I tried not to feel annoyed by her interest, which is great. I love how much he hates Luke. And he tells her what Poseidon, who he does cite as my dad, which I think is nice. I'm always keening in on if he calls Poseidon or dad. So he is calling him dad, which he's done more recently, which I think is cool. He calls him my dad and reveals what Poseidon said to him about Luke and the Princess Andromeda and all of that. Annabeth says that if the final battle does come when Percy turns 16, which of course it will because this is a children's series, that will give them time to figure something out. And Percy gets annoyed by, quote, figure something out because he reads this as, quote, get Luke to change his ways. And he's just so bitter about the whole Luke of it all. And I love it. I love it so much. I think it's so good. Now, Chiron, who narrator Percy notes looks uncharacteristically noticeably old. Like he knows Chiron is old, very old at that, but he notes that he actually looks his age here. I guess not 1,000 million years old, but still. Chiron states that 2 years may seem like a long time, but it's just the blink of an eye. It can go by quickly. And he hopes that Percy is not the prophecy child, but if he is, it means the Second Titan War is upon them, and the first strike will be at Camp Half-Blood. Very intense, and as someone that loves to procrastinate, I don't enjoy someone reminding me that something that feels a long time away isn't actually a long time away. Shout out to Kelly who did that in our whole process of moving.
Oh my God. It was
essential.
Wednesday, and I packed away all of our silverware. We're moving on Thursday. We have to have everything in boxes on Thursday. On Wednesday, I pack away our silverware. Mike comes home, and he's like, what am I supposed to eat this yogurt with? I'm like, here's a plastic spoon. He's like, I wasn't done with the other ones. I'm like, we're moving tomorrow. You're done with them. You're done with everything here.
It's also something that I'll do with these live shows because they're usually booked months in advance. And then I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, September's a million years from now. And then it'll be mid-August. And I'm like, oh God, the show's in 3 weeks. So Percy, like me, asks Chiron how he knows that the first attack would be at Camp Half-Blood and why Kronos would care about a camp. I think it's a very astute question to ask. Chiron says, because gods use heroes as tools. And he basically says, if you destroy the tools, the gods will be hindered. So have them not be as strong. Chiron says that Luke's full forces will arrive, mortals, demigods, and monsters, oh my. But Clarice's news may reveal how they will attack. But of course, we can't learn it here, because it's Chiron in charge of the information, and the book's about to end. Gotta sell those books. I like that Chiron is the vessel for people buying more books in the series. So Nico then knocks on the door, interrupting Chiron, which I'm sure Chiron jumped for joy. Because Chiron didn't abruptly stop. Nico kind of came in, and I bet Chiron was like, yes, the plot. Nico comes in, and he unfortunately asks, where's Bianca? And Percy realizes, after the room goes completely silent, that no one's told Nico. And then he realizes, oh, they wanted to tell Nico in person. And then he realizes, I should probably be the one to tell Nico in person.
That makes me pretty angry. Chiron should be the one to tell him in person, not a 14-year-old kid.
Yeah.
I don't think it was his responsibility.
I was upset about it until we see what happens next, and then I realized, yes, this makes the book more interesting.
I guess
so. I have to push it away. This is not the mature stance I would have now that I'm 30 and a big adult boy. This is not the stance that I would have had if this is when I was 25/26, 27 and doing Potterless. I would have been super mad about this. But now I realize, what happens next needed to happen without Chiron being there. So it just makes the book more interesting. I'll give it a slide. But in the moment, I was feeling the same way as you. Chiron should have done this.
He couldn't tell Nico because he's all about the plot.
He is all about the plot.
He had to let this happen.
Chiron knows. He's like, oh man, it would be so much spicier if Percy told him. So narrator Percy says, quote, that was the last thing I wanted to do, but I owed it to Bianca. And then continuing, he says, hey, Nico. And narrator Percy says, I got up from my comfortable chair. Let's take a walk, okay? We need to talk. And the comfortable chair line is great because this is something that I'm sure my English teachers would be very proud. He's noting that he's in a comfortable position and he's leaving the comfortable position to have an uncomfortable conversation. Pretty good, right?
Literary genius.
As previously mentioned, I'm 30. I'm more than twice the age of the target demographic of this book. Look at me finding context. Oh. So narrator Percy explains that Nico took the news silently, which makes it way worse. And it causes Percy to over-explain, which makes it even more way worse. I relate so hard. If I was trying to explain something awkward to someone and they didn't say anything, I would keep going and it would just be so bad. I need to be more comfortable in awkwardness. Our friend Jessica is very good at this. And I need to do this, especially in work-type situations.
My friend Jessica and I have discussed this. The power of silence is the best. You say exactly what you're supposed to say, and if the other person wants to get more information out of you via their silence, you just let them sit in the silence. And you're just like, I'm taking that day off of work.
Because, yeah, that was Jessica's situation,
That's
is
it.
they were trying to be like, oh, do you really need to take this vacation
like,
day?
yes.
And she just didn't say anything.
Just,
and then the
let
person
them-
just slowly backtracked to like, okay, enjoy your vacation. Like,
just
the power
waiting
of
for you to
silence.
over-explain and give more than you're supposed to. Power of silence.
She should write a self-help book called The Power of Silence. But it's actually a good self-help book, unlike all the ones I read in college, like How to Win Friends and Alienate People, which would just be called How to Be a Psychopath. Wild book. And then what was the one? It was one of the summer reading books. It was something.
the one called Quiet?
Yes.
Yeah.
I know, I'm sure a lot of people here in the crowd and the folks listening are introverts, but this whole book, Quiet, it was like Quiet, the power of whatever was the subcolon. And it was all like, extroverts are the worst. Am I right, guys? And I was like, I know some of us are bad, but I don't know. Is it so wrong that I like talking to people? I hated this book a lot. It made me feel really bad about like enjoying conversations in public settings. Like, I don't think one is better than the other. It's just like, can't we just all get along? I don't know. It made me feel very uncomfortable.
I think, though, as the nature of extroverts dominate the conversation a lot of the time.
The
So I
bad
think
ones, yes.
a book about introverts
I say
makes-
as I interrupt you.
I think a book about introverts makes introverts feel seen
Right.
in a larger context, because typically you don't have the floor to say that.
I would have been very on board with it because half of the book was
The
about.
book was written poorly.
Sure.
But the message was on point.
I think the parts of the book that were about introverts being seen, I enjoyed, but I didn't like the 50% of the book that was like, these extroverts suck too, right, guys? I was like, oh, I think I'm okay. Anyway, Percy Jackson. Percy then gives Nico the figurine from before, and he says that Bianca wanted him to have it. And they're at the same dining pavilion where Percy made his dangerous promise that was so dangerous it was a chapter title. And Nico cites that promise saying, quote, "You promised you would protect her." And I wrote in my notes, he promised that he would do his best.
Yes.
He didn't promise that he would protect her. He tried very hard. So he lived up to his promise. Percy doesn't go that route, but instead says, "Nico, I tried, but Bianca gave herself up to save the rest of us. I told her not to, but she," and Nico interrupts him screaming, "You promised." His eyes are red. He clenches his fist around the figurine. He says, "I shouldn't have trusted you." And then his voice breaks and he says, "You lied to me. My nightmares were right." And this is just devastating stuff. You don't want to hear this. And it feels way worse to hear it from someone that looks up to you. That's tough.
I think this is the enemy that he's made for Christmas. That's what I thought it was.
No, you're right.
anyway.
You're 1,000%
Yeah,
right.
he made an enemy.
There you go. And this is why I have smart people on the podcast. Percy asks what nightmares, because Percy knows nightmares are very important in these books. Nico throws the god statue on the ground and screams, "I hate you." Percy desperately adds that she could still be alive. Nico says that she's dead, and he can feel that she's being judged in the fields of Asphodel right now. And Percy asks, "How can you feel that?" And I wrote in my notes, "Because his dad is Hades, Percy." But before that can be discussed further, 4 of the skeletons show up, and I just wrote, "Oh, just leave! Just go away! We don't want you here anymore."
Before the skeletons, what do you think is up with Bianca?
I believe that Hades kind of did the same thing he did to Sally with the Minotaur, where before her demise could be met, he kind of yoinked her out of there. So I think that she probably is in the underworld, but I don't think she died. I think Hades was like, scoop, and brought her back in. Just like that. He made the Spider-Man motion and everything. He's just got a web shooter that yoinks people into the underworld. When you die, you just get web shooted by Hades. Nico accuses Percy of trying to kill him by bringing these skeletons. Percy calls for him to run. Nico says he doesn't trust Percy, and then a skeleton charges. Percy fends it off, but then the others approach. Percy yells for Nico to get help, but Nico says no, and he puts his hands on his ears, and I wrote, oh, he's just gonna squash them all, isn't he? He's gonna do some cool Hades power stuff. Percy's fighting them off like hell, but he knows it's only a matter of time before he gets overpowered. It's 1 versus 4, it's just not sustainable. Nico then shouts louder, "No, go away," and "Go away." is in italics. So that's how you know it's extra powerful. Narrator Percy says the following: the ground rumbled beneath me, the skeletons froze. I rolled out of the way just as a crack opened at the feet of the 4 warriors. The ground ripped apart like a snapping mouth. Flames erupted from the fissure, and the earth swallowed the skeletons in one loud crunch. And then there's a line break. I love Uncle Rick's use of line breaks. There's a line break, and then it just says, silence. Oh, it's so good.
The power of silence.
The power of silence. It's so good. It's so good. What a visual. And then all it does is leave a 20-foot scar in the marble flooring, but all the other evidence of the skeletons is gone. Very, very cool stuff. Percy is absolutely flummoxed, and he begins to ask Nico how he did that, but Nico yells, "Go away, I hate you, I wish you were dead," which Nico is just really driving this point home, and I feel so bad for Percy, because he really did his best.
Yeah. Nico's just looking for somebody to put the blame on.
Right, and he's also 10.
Yes, exactly. That's why he's looking for somebody to put the blame on.
Narrator Percy then, after Nico says, "I hate you, I want you to die," etc., etc., Narrator Percy says, "The ground didn't swallow me up," but Nico ran down the steps heading towards the woods. Percy tries to chase after him, but he slips on the figurine, and when he examines it, it all becomes clear. And I knew, all right, here we go. Percy realizes with dread why it looks familiar, and I picked up on this, that it was very convenient that Percy goes, "I couldn't recognize who it was." Like, there's 12 gods? Come on, man. You can figure it. I didn't realize who it was. So now he can finally realize why it looks familiar. He had seen this god before. It was a statue of Hades, Lord of the Dead. I'm very excited. Glad my predictions are going right. But at the same time, and maybe this is on the brain because we're doing a Potterless show that's themed around Ludo Bagman in the second half, I too would love for me to be famously wrong about one of these guesses I'm taking. But thankfully, 2 of the reviews that I've read on Apple Podcasts for the News Olympian say, I love when he's right about stuff.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, I'm glad. But there were times in Potterless when I would get stuff right, where people would write these long either emails or reviews where people were convinced I was lying to be right. Like when I would get right, people would like think that I read ahead and I was lying about all this stuff. Like I have something to gain by being right. Like I get more money if I'm correct or something. Like, no, on the contrary, like 50% of Potterless merch was Ludo Bagman themed. It's actually more financially viable if I'm super wrong. Anyway, Annabeth and Grover help Percy search the forest for Nico, but after hours of looking, there's just no sign of him. Annabeth says that they have to tell Chiron, but Percy says no, which confuses Grover and me, because it feels like it's the obvious decision to make here.
If we tell Chiron, he'll make us do the plot stuff.
If we tell Chiron, there might only be 4 books. We need a whole book about trying to get Nico back. So Percy explains that they can't let anyone know because he doesn't think that anyone realizes that Nico is the son of Hades. And Annabeth thinks that this is horrible and it's very serious because now Hades also could have been someone to have broken the oath. But Percy brings up something that I completely failed to realize. It's that Hades didn't actually break the oath because since we know how old Bianca and Nico are based on their knowledge of presidents, they are pre-World War II born people. So they were pre-oath. They were just stuck in the Lotus Casino for so long. So Hades is actually okay. He's in the clear, or at least to our knowledge he is. So I thought that was really astute of Percy to bring up. Annabeth then asks, okay, but how did they get out of the Lotus Casino? And Percy shares how Bianca told him that some lawyer got them out. I don't know who this lawyer is. I don't know if there's some sort of like Greek thing I'm supposed to be picking up on, that there's like some Greek lawyer. No clue who this could be. But Percy doesn't know who it could have been or why they would have done it, but he just wonders if this is maybe part of the Great Stirring is why they've been removed. Percy tells him that he doesn't think Nico even recognizes who he is, and he just says, we can't tell anyone, not even Chiron, because if the Olympians find out, and Annabeth finishes a sentence, which is very cute, that all of the Olympians might start fighting again, and that's the last thing that they need right now. They want a unified front. And I get that, but I feel like you can achieve that, but still tell Chiron. Because like I feel like you could trust Chiron to know, since Chiron's very good about not telling Percy particular pieces of information when he knows if it's best to serve him or not. I feel like Chiron could know, all right, here's what I can tell you guys, but I'm not going to tell them. Because even he'll send people on secret missions and stuff. So I don't know. This is to me, a mistake.
I agree, but has Chiron ever kept anything from the gods? Doesn't he really just answer to them?
I guess so.
It'd
I don't
be
know
like
if he
putting
is
your boss in the position where they can't tell their boss something when they're obligated to.
Yeah, they really need Greek HR.
I was about to say
Like,
that.
they need just like it just feels like you need someone to talk to that isn't going to tell, because the Olympians are very gossipy. Word gets around. There's all prophecies and stuff. Like, Chiron feels like the safest space, but you're right. If he is obligated to tell people, then I don't know. But I'll have to see. Maybe by the end of the series, we'll see if he ever did withhold information, because I don't know yet if he has.
I don't remember.
But it just feels like Chiron would be a good person to tell with all of this stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming a major plot point in book 4 will be trying to get Nico back. And then what is about to happen has me even more worried. So Grover is worried, saying that you can't just hide things from the gods forever. Then Percy says, quote, "I don't need forever, just 2 years until I'm 16.
That's a long time.
Yeah, I mean, not a lot of time. Okay, fine. But the other thing that I was wondering is, how have the gods not figured this out yet? Like, the gods are supposed to be all-knowing. Aren't they supposed to, like, know? Maybe Hades hasn't claimed them, or he put some sort of spell on it, but it does feel strange to me that nobody would know, especially since they've been around for a very long time, like more than their advertised age. I don't know.
Right. It's the other thing I don't quite understand. Whenever Percy has like dis Zeus, the thunder rumbles, like he's listening. So couldn't they just be listening now?
Maybe it's because of the gods where it's like people who incessantly check their Twitter mentions, or the people that go the next step where they like search their name untagged into the search bar. Oh, wild decision. People do this, which is ridiculous to me.
I didn't know that was a thing.
So, like, I'll just pick a name out of a hat for someone who may have done this. Like, say you're Neil deGrasse Tyson or something, right? And people make fun of you on the internet because you suck. Sometimes people will tag you and you'll get the notification, but sometimes you can search like Neil deGrasse Tyson, and then you can scroll a lot and find someone say something mean about you, and then you can quote tweet it and be like, actually, science. And then people will know only way you found this is either someone sent it to you or you searched your own name. And maybe that's like the gods, what they're doing. Because anytime Percy says any sort of potential slight dig at Zeus, thunder rumbles.
Yeah.
You're correct. But maybe they're not paying attention to more important things.
Yeah.
So maybe they're just like really petty. And they like don't like anytime people are talking smack about him.
Or just he has like an auto thunder response.
Yeah.
Like an auto email reply just set to like dis Zeus.
Hello, I've heard you said something potentially negative about me. Here is thunder as a retort. Annabeth cautions Percy that the prophecy might not be about him. It could be about Nico. But Percy says that he will choose the prophecy so that it will be about him. Annabeth asks why he would want to be responsible for the fate of the world, but Percy says it's because he can't let Nico be in any more danger, not after his failed promise. Which again, I was like, look, it's not a failed promise, man. You promised you would try your best. You did stop yourself short. Annabeth worries about the possibility of Luke getting Nico. And when she says that, I just slumped in my chair. That is devastating and feels like a good plot point, which makes me worried that it could be even more likely to happen, because it would be very interesting to read about. So I don't want it to happen, but it would be very spicy. And then Percy says that won't happen, which now it's totally going to. I was like, I didn't even think about this, and now I'm just convinced that it will happen, and I'm so sad about it.
Why didn't anybody knock on wood after this conversation?
They should have like, got to be knocking all over the place. Come on, guys. Maybe it's too much marble around because it's Greek stuff. Now, Percy says that he's going to make sure that Luke has other things to worry about, quote, namely me, which is
nice.
Great. The team tells Chiron that Nico disappeared, but Percy doesn't say exactly what happened, and narrator Percy reveals that he's not sure whether or not Chiron actually believed them. And at this, I realized, okay, Chiron probably knows what's going on, so maybe it's okay. Chiron, and this could be even better, right? Where no one's told Chiron, so he's not going to lie to the gods.
He's got
so
plausible deniability here.
Hopefully, correct. Hopefully, he can at least like act on this. So I'm glad Chiron is very good at seeing through the BS of these kids. Now, Chiron says, which is just a devastating quote, that he hopes Nico was eaten by monsters rather than recruited into the Titans' army, because that is a worse fate. So that is such a serious quote that I'm like, all right, I really hope Chiron knows what happened, because this could be super bad. Narrator Percy says, quote, "That idea made me really uneasy. I almost changed my mind about telling Chiron, but I didn't." I was like, come on, man. You got to just tell him, man. Come on. Percy asks Chiron if he really thinks that the first attack will be here at Camp Half-Blood. Chiron says yes, but it won't be until the summer, because that's how the books work. He tells Percy to go home, to focus on school, and to rest. And Percy asks Annabeth what she's going to do. And she says that she's going to San Francisco, which I think is very sweet, be with the fam. Percy tells her to Iris message him if anything goes wrong, and Annabeth agrees. But then she also agrees with Chiron that the attack won't be until summer because Luke needs time to heal. And I thought, okay, that makes more sense. But also, it's the structure of the book. We already had Christmas break book. Of course, now we're going to have our traditional summer book for book 4. Percy tells her to take care of herself and not to do any outlandish stunts in the Sopwith camel, which is great. Annabeth is about to say something sentimental to Percy, but then Grover ruins the moment, because that's what Grover does. Chiron's here for the plot. Grover's here to make sure that Percy and Annabeth don't have a big romantic kiss until book 5. He has a frantic announcement that he was playing music in the parlor and drinking lots of coffee when he was what did you say?
Of course, drinking coffee.
When he was spoken to by Pan himself. And Pan simply stated, quote, "I await you." And then I realized, oh, right, the next book is called The Battle of the Labyrinth. And Pan's Labyrinth is a thing, but I haven't seen that movie. The only 2 things I know is that David Bowie's in it.
What?
And then there's the guy who does the eyes hand thing. That is where my knowledge about Pan's Labyrinth starts and ends. I don't know if the whole movie's in Spanish or part of it's in Spanish. And then it was made, who's the director that won the BS Oscar for Fish People? Yeah, thank you. Guillermo del Toro. Didn't win the Oscar for that movie, right? But then they gave it to him for The Shape of Water, robbing Get Out, which totally should have won the Oscar. I saw The Shape of Water. It was fine. It was not the greatest film of the year. It was Get Out, easily. But everyone explained to me when I was angry that it was kind of like a Lifetime Achievement Award for Mr. Del Toro. Anyway, I think he made Pan's Labyrinth. Labyrinth. It made sense. We're all back here at the end of this book. I'm stoked for the Battle of the Labyrinth. I have no idea what's going on, but I'm assuming there will be a maze. And that's the end of book 3. How you feeling?
I feel great. Book 4 is actually one of my favorite ones, so I'm really looking forward to this.
I've heard people really like books 3, 4, and 5 almost equally, with like 5 having a slight edge, which makes me very glad that I named the podcast after the 5th book. So I picked well. It would be a shame if I picked it after the least favorite book in the series, but it worked out. But speaking of things that worked out, this episode worked out. So Kelly, thank you so much for joining for this episode of The Newest Olympian.
Hello and welcome to the Titan's Purse. This is a special Titan's Purse twofold. First, this is the Bundaberg edition of the Titan's Purse, where I'm currently staying. Just did a Great Barrier Reef overnight trip. It was wonderful. But second, this is the final Titan's Purse before we transition into our specially named ad rolls for the in-between episodes. And then when we get into book 4, where the ad break will become the ad roll of the Labyrinth. Very excited for this monumentous occasion, but we've got some fun announcements here in the final Titan's Purse. First, if you live in Australia or New Zealand, get your ears perked up. You may have already heard me talk about our upcoming shows in Melbourne. I'm doing a show on November 23rd for Potterless and a show on November 24th for the Newest Olympian, both of them at the Comedy Republic in Melbourne. Tickets are almost sold out for the TNO show. There's a bit more availability for the Potterless show, but there's a good chance we sell out. So head on over to thenewestolympian.com/live to check those out. And make sure you're following at Newest Olympian on Twitter or Instagram, where I will post about what chapters will be covered in that live show. Now, if you live in New Zealand, get very excited because I'm doing 2 shows while I'm in town. Things are official, but the ticket sales are not live quite yet. So make sure you're following at Newest Olympian on Twitter or Instagram. Once they go live, I will post about it. But mark your calendars if you live in or near Christchurch. For December 3rd, we'll be doing a joint show for Potterless and the Newest Olympian at Little Andromeda. And then if you're in or near Auckland on December 17th, you should come to the joint Potterless and the Newest Olympian show we're doing at the Herald Theatre. Again, Christchurch, December 3rd, Auckland, December 17th. Those are the New Zealand shows. Once you are able to buy tickets, I will post those online. And a huge thank you to all the folks who came to the Sydney show. It was such a blast. Sarah Barra was able to come into town because she lives in Australia currently. She was the guest, and it was so much fun. Can't wait for all of you listening to hear what will eventually become one of our Book 4 episodes. And just a quick final reminder, if you didn't see, we launched new merch over at thenewestlympian.com/merch, and a couple of folks have asked. We are currently in the process of restocking the Riptide pens. I will try to get an update from the merch company about when those will be back in stock, but we are actively trying to get those back in stock. What I'm not out of stock in is support on Patreon, and we actually had a new stock come in the form of new patrons, so shout out to the newest members of our team who joined at thenewestlympian.com/Patreon, which is where you get access to all sorts of fun bonus content. I just posted some bonus clips from episodes that had to be cut. We did a live stream. I'm posting a bonus episode soon. Lots of fun stuff going over there. But shout out to our newest Ultra God tier patron, Francesca Pacheco. Shout out to our newest God tier patron, LOL. And shout out to our newest Demigod tier patron, Brend Appleby. Thank you all so much for your support. May Hephaestus bless you where if you're ever in the situation where you have to drive a car on a different side of the road than you're used to, that you manage the machinery just well and you handle everything just swimmingly, knocking on wood that I keep my streak of not crashing going. Finally, if you are all caught up on the Newest Olympian and you're looking for new content from Mike Schubert and you want something new, you may have missed that I am doing a Dungeons & Dragons 5e stream with some other podcasters on a fortnightly basis over at twitch.tv/20 to midnight. It is a stream with Gabrielle Urbina and Emma Sherjarko and Beth Eyre, 3 lovely other podcast people. And every other week, we just have a fun time playing D&D. We put replays up on our YouTube channel. We also have replays available on Twitch. It's every other Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. And then every now and then we'll hop on just to do some unscheduled gaming stuff in between. So you can check out all the information about it at our 20 to midnight website, which is 20tomidnight.com. And the Twitch link is twitch.tv/20 to midnight, 20to midnight. I've been having a lot of fun. I'm being a silly bard. We're only 3 episodes in, so now's the right time to get in on the ground floor and catch up on the beginning of the story. And you can say, oh, hey, I was there from the beginning. And finally, before we wrap up here, you're going to hear words from a few sponsors who make it feasible for me to be a full-time podcaster. Some of these ads will be read by me. Others of them won't. The ones that are not read by me are inserted locally. So if you live in Bundaberg, don't be surprised if you get an ad for Bundaberg ginger beer, which I can attest is delicious. And I went to the tasting facility, which is shaped like a barrel of ginger beer, and it was fantastic. They're not paying me to say this, but I would love if they sponsored the show. Anyway, once those ads are complete, we'll get back to this episode of The Newest Olympian. And just for context about what this second part of the episode is, it is the Q&A from the live show that we did in Salt Lake City. The guest for Act 2 was Kim Harris from Fanatical Fics and Where to Find Them. So if you hear someone that is not Kelly, that is why. It's Kim, and it's still a very fun time. Lots of fun Percy Jackson questions, and we'll do that to close out the episode.
Q&A questions are here. We got a couple minutes. Let's do them. Now, this one is from Angela Z. Angela asks, would you rather ride a Pegasus or a hippocampi? This is someone, a PGO fan, front row Clarice stand for life. I know you are not a big PGO person. Hippocampi, basically like a water, above water, like think big seahorse kind of thing.
Okay.
And then Pegasus, wings with
Pegasus.
horse. Either of those two, what are you feeling?
I think do I have to ride it into the water?
Not like down below.
Okay,
No,
I don't
they
want
ride
to die.
on
I'd rather not die.
It's like a cool speedboat friend.
Oh, that totally is the one.
Okay.
I think I would fall off the Pegasus.
Yeah, I feel like I would probably also pick hippocampi just because I would be more scared of slipping off. Like a Pegasus doesn't feel secure.
Uh-huh.
So I feel like I would go for the water thing because at least if I fall off, it's just there. If I fall off the Pegasus,
That's
incredibly
the end.
high stakes. Now, this next question, I got a lot of questions about this, but the first one was from Derek. Made the subject line bees with 2 exclamation points, which is very close to my favorite card in Cards Against Humanity, which is bees with a question mark.
Uh-huh.
But Derek asks, what are your feelings about the Knicks not getting Donovan Mitchell? For anyone unaware, even for the people here in Utah, the Utah Jazz are a basketball team. And there was a player on that team named Donovan Mitchell who didn't want to be on the team anymore. And he wanted to go and play for my favorite team, the New York Knicks. And they were trying to trade them. But Danny Ainge, who runs your team, said, no! You have to trade me 1,000,000 players and picks and all the gold in the world because I'm Danny Ainge. And I don't like that this guy wants to leave the team. And the Knicks said, no, thank you. And then the Cleveland Cavaliers said, no one will willingly go to Cleveland, so we have to trade for people. So they traded more things. Am I bitter? Nah. Like, I wanted Donovan Mitchell on the team very badly. It would have been very, very cool. But I didn't want to trade. And by I'm employed by
You
the
thought
team.
the trade was a bad deal.
I thought it was just too much to give up, so
Sure,
I'm
sure.
okay with it. I'm sad that we don't have the player, but at the price it costs, sure. But on the walk over here, there was a big Donovan Mitchell mural on the wall, and I was like, oh, how have we not repainted this one yet? Come on, guys. Like, or at least put like a sticker or a spray paint, something. There's a big Donovan Mitchell mural. It's like, oh, no. So this next one is from just a random one at random. This subject line is SLC live show question from your wife. It's from a longtime listener of the show, Kelly Beckman Schubert. Kelly says, hi again, everyone. Now my question, which is for Kim and the crowd. Okay, Kelly's had a tough time with being in Salt Lake City, but wanting to refer to the literal Salt Lake that the city is named after.
Sure.
Because she gets confused and saying, I want to go to Salt Lake, but, the Salt Lake. So she asks...
She wants to go to the salted lake.
Oh, yeah, okay.
No, that's not it. Nobody says that. Don't say that.
So Kelly asks, does anyone call it the Salt Lake, the Salty Lake, which is what Kelly keeps calling it, or the titular lake? What is your official name for the lake we're discussing?
It's the Salt Lake.
The Salt Lake.
That's
is that
the name.
consensus?
Yeah,
the Salt Lake.
That's the name.
Because I also saw the Great. Is that another one? Okay, a lot of people saying the Great Salt Lake.
Great Salt Lake. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. It's
cool.
not so. Come on, guys. Come on, guys. It's stinky. It's shrinking. It's
a pretty good lake.
It's
Great,
a lake
great,
that's
great.
doing its best.
Someone said you have John Mulaney vibes, but stand-up John Mulaney, not overdosing John Mulaney. Thank you for the compliment. I appreciate that a lot. Okay, this is from Alex H. Have you ever thought about moving from children's novels to young adult novels with a winky emoji? I liked this question before I saw the winky emoji after it. My wife recently convinced me to read A Court of Thorns and Roses, and I really enjoyed it. I would love to see your reactions and stuff. Here's what I will say. I don't know if you've read this book. There seems to be a violent
No, I
reaction
think
in
it's
the
a
crowd.
little spicy. Is that really YA?
Oh.
Is that
Was that
YA?
maybe that explains the maybe that
Not
maybe that
YA,
explains
okay.
the
All
winky
right.
face
All
that was
right.
in the email. But I'm just saying, I've got so much Rick Riordan stuff to read.
Yeah.
I'm good. So I think I'm
Enjoy
thankfully
Percy
set.
Jackson.
I am enjoying it so much. It's a really good book series. Can't recommend it enough, especially listening to the companion podcast, the newest Olympian. Okay, here's a fun one. If the Percy Jackson universe played a basketball game against the Harry Potter universe, who would you pick for a starting five for each side? Now, so this is from Haley,
really
a
good
Ravenclaw,
question.
and Caroline, a Hufflepuff. We'll end the show here. P.S. Our husbands want to know what the pattern is on your shirt. This was sent during the first act. That was a seahorse sweater. So I have it in shirt form and polo form and bathing suit form. I am not sponsored by the company that makes them, so I'm not going to say their name. But if they do, I'll say it instead. I've tried so hard to get sponsored by them. Most of my clothes, this shirt, these pants are also from them. Okay. They make good clothes that fit me well.
look
It's
great.
easy for online shopping. I can be like, I know
You look
these fit.
great.
I know my size. I wait till they're on sale.
Oh yeah, definitely don't say their name now. You said too much nice stuff
I
about them.
know. I'll say so many nice things if you sponsor me. Unnamed clothing company. Now, 5-on-5 basketball, Percy Jackson versus Harry Potter. Before we even get into this, the Percy Jackson team is going to stomp the ever-living crap
Hell yeah.
out of the Harry Potter team. They're going to be
Nice.
so
They
bad.
actually have powers though, right? It's not just magic or whatever.
we gotta limit
Does the teamwork
magic.
make the dream work?
It
Is that what it
should.
is?
That is, I love saying that. It's true.
Oh, did I take?
No. Teamwork makes the dream work has always been a very fun one for me. When I worked in Papado Seafood Kitchen in the break room, they had a poster and it was framed and it was people rowing in a big crew boat and it said teamwork makes the dream work. And I was like, that's good.
no.
I'm going to say on that on my future podcasts that I don't know exist forever. Now, basketball-wise, I mean, I feel like you should have Fred, George, and Ron because they're all tall. Being tall is good in basketball.
Okay.
Ron is even canonically in the books
Ron's
taller
tall.
than Fred.
I will say Ron is definitely
canonically
tall.
very tall.
Yes.
Hagrid also feels like a great selection.
well, yeah.
Very tall.
If you're gonna have adults against, is it all children?
It doesn't
Is
have to.
all-
I mean,
guess
that's where it can get
there's
messy because we can get like literal gods on the
Yeah.
Percy Jackson
Yeah,
team.
that team would definitely win.
Yeah, that's going to be tough. I feel like we should go kids versus kids. That way we
Okay.
get away like
Well, then
teachers
take
and
Hagrid
Dark
off.
Lords. So we'll take Hagrid off. I feel like I would want to have Fred and George got
Okay.
that twin
Right.
symmetry.
They are very good at the sport that they play, so
Right.
that probably
They
transfers.
work well. You know, I feel like we could go with a full Weasley team,
Huh.
right? Like we could have Ginny. She's
Okay.
very good at Quidditch.
Sure.
We could have Ron in there. We could have Charlie. He's good
Percy.
with dragons.
Percy seems-
Percy's the manager. Like,
He'd be very good
he'd
at
be
that.
great at that, bossing
Very
around
good
his
at
siblings. Thriving role for Percy.
I love
So
this
yeah, I
Weasley
like
team.
full Weasley team. Arthur is in the crowd with a big sign,
He's
like cheering them
there
all
for-
on.
Yeah, Harry's there.
Bill is
Beautiful.
looking cool. Like,
Yes.
yeah, he could be the cheerleader.
Bill is just there being handsome.
Being
Yep.
super cool and hot. Yes, great. Boom. Percy Jackson
Charlie's
team.
the mascot.
No,
We're doing great.
I think we need Charlie to. Maybe he is the mascot. He's in big dragon costume, living his best life. Pretty good. Pretty good. Molly knit them all their uniforms. Pretty good. Yeah, but they're like all wool, so they're like terrible for jerseys. Percy Jackson team. I feel like we need Percy Jackson. He knows enough about basketball. He says he plays basketball, so he's going to be on the team. From who we know, I feel like Annabeth would be good. She's very quick. I would say Beckendorf. I think he's described as being tall, but he's like pretty robust.
Got a tall, a fast, knows basketball. This is shaping up to be a great team.
And then, similar to Fred and George, there's a twin. They're not twin brothers. They're just brothers.
Okay.
They're the Stolls, and they're children of Hermes. So they're like tricky and stuff.
Okay.
Which I think they're similar to. They'd be a
like
good counterpart to Fred and George.
Kind of stuff.
Yeah, they could do cool tricks
Some
and
hijinks.
stuff.
Hijinks on both sides.
Yeah.
This is going to be the best basketball game ever.
So that would be a 5-on-5, and the Percy Jackson team would mop the floor with the Harry Potter team because, to quote Oliver Wood, what's basketball? Should have stopped Potterless right then and there. But thank you all so much, everybody, for coming out. Give yourselves a round of applause for coming out to the show. And give it up to our lovely guests. We had Kelly, who I think is, Kelly's at the merch table if you want to get merch as well. Give it up to Kelly for being a great guest for Act 1. Give it up to Kim for being a great guest for Act 2. Shout out to everybody here at Metro Music Hall, from sound to hospitality. Everyone's been super nice and wonderful. So round of applause to them for making this all happen. Very glad that I could come back. Thank you guys all so much for coming out to the show. I'm going to clean up the mess that I made here on stage and then skedoodle back up because I have an episode of the newest Olympian coming out in a couple of hours that I need to still work on because I've been moving all week. But you've all been wonderful. Thank you all so much. And I guess I got to do both of the sign-offs. So until next time, when I make a return to the land of bees, I'll say what they always say, which is that...
the Potterless one? I know
I'm going to do the Potterless. We'll wizard on, and I'll see you later. Thanks for coming out, everybody.
Hey, thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Newest Olympian. This podcast is created, hosted, and produced by me, Mike Schubert. I also run the social media and the website. Our editor and TikTok account runner is Sherry Guo. The music is by Bettina Campamanes and Brandon Grugel, and the art is by Jessica E. Boyd. If you want to get involved in the community around the show, you can do so on social media. We are at Newest Olympian on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Facebook also has the spoiler group and the spoiler-free group. We also are at reddit.com/r/The Newest Olympian. If you want to take it to the next level, you can get in on the TNO Discord by joining our Patreon by going to thenewestolympian.com/Patreon. Speaking of that Patreon, that's where bonus content lives. If you're looking for more TNO content, bonus episodes, director's commentary, monthly live streams, those all live there. And speaking of that Patreon, I want to give a huge shout out to our producer level patrons: Lotta Bartova, Kelsey Gillespie, The Damn Steam Nuggets, Emma Cooey, Vicky Garcia, Ellie Hoskovchova, Veronica Bartova, Haley Hastings, Robin Garcia, Frida Vikstrom, Megan Moon, Tuff Bayfong, Olivia Y, Craig McRoberts, Taylor Payne, Giselle Salvador, Peter Johnson the Twin, Sabrina Balsiger, Boney Pony, Heather McMillan, Casey Williams, Polly Burge, Nikki Harris, Tatiana Schmidt, Sandra Rose, Bridget Lowry, Josh Sayre, Josh Wilkie, Abby Ryan, Wise Girl, Ashton Gabrielson, Marco Redhouse, Falcon Joey James, Christopher William Boucher, Lux, Caden Mack, Sam Reeby, Carly Allen, Riley Kiedis, Mary Kelly, Audra, McKenzie, Mrs. O'Leary, Aaron Wood, Rodith Kalna, Milo Kim, Fred Cabras, Harlan Christ, CC Reeds 23, Sandkopf, Julia Kendall, Emil Oskar Thomason, Noah Bungard, Liz Cardigan, Shatzabobs, Michelle Spurgeon, Zachary Hamilton, Ginger Spursboy, Rachel Bernatowicz, Sarah Neal, Ricky, and Francesca Pacheco. If you want to help out the show in a non-monetary way, spreading it via word of mouth is essential to the podcast's growth. If you think of someone that would like the show, you could reach out to them directly and say, hey, there's this podcast. You love Percy Jackson. Listen to it. Or you've been looking for an excuse to read the Percy Jackson books. Here's a digital book club. Or you could post about the show on social media or leave it a rating and review on whatever podcasting app you're using. All of these things really do help, and I appreciate all of you who have done it in the past or will do it in the future. But I'm just so thankful that you tuned into this episode, and I hope you tune into our next episode, which is an in-between episode. It's Greek myth catch-up time with Dr. Moy McTeer. But until then, I'll pursue you later. Hey everyone, how's it going? It's me, ASMR Mike. So in the midroll, I mentioned that I did an overnight trip on the Great Barrier Reef. It was wonderful, and part of the trip, we went to a small island to observe turtles that were laying eggs. It was fantastic. But while we were waiting, we went through a forest on the island, and there was a bunch of shearwater birds, and they do this type of mating call because they burrow in pairs. So they call it to their mate before they burrow, and it sounds like a bunch of people imitating ghosts or the wind. So I took a tiny little voice memo while we were walking through with our tour guide. Here is the audio of these birds. It's truly ridiculous.
Little birdies. My new favorite bird.
Thank you for listening.